Good evening, everyone. Tonight, I want to talk about a topic that many of us hesitate to confront: the unloved women. Not because they are truly unlovable, no one is, but because they've been told in word, action, or silence that they are. The unloved woman walks through life carrying an invisible weight. She internalizes whispers of rejection, feels the sting of exclusion, and lives with a nagging question: what's wrong with me? But here's the truth. Her worthiness was never up for debate. Her value has never been tied to the opinions of others. Let's get real about what it means to feel unloved. It's a painful lie. It's a wound inflicted by societal standards, toxic relationships, and even our own inner critic. But the healing, that starts when we decide to reclaim our power, rewrite our narrative, and rise with unwavering self-compassion. The unloved woman is not broken. She is resilient. She is powerful. And when she stops searching for her worth in external validation, she becomes unstoppable. Let's rewrite the story, not just for her, but for every woman who has ever doubted her own brilliance. Because no one is unloved, and no one ever has to stay stuck believing they are reclaiming your narrative. Reclaiming your narrative is about taking back control of the story you tell yourself about who you are and what you're worth. It's about refusing to let past wounds, societal expectations, or other people's opinions define you. For many women who feel unloved, the narrative often begins in silence, moments when love was withheld, when efforts went unrecognized, or when criticism drowned out kindness. Over time, those experiences can form a distorted internal story. I'm not good enough. I'm not worthy. I'm not lovable. But let me tell you something, those stories are not the truth. They are interpretations shaped by pain and circumstances, not by your inherent value. And the beautiful thing about stories is that they can be rewritten. Rewriting your narrative starts with awareness. Take a moment to reflect: what do I believe about myself? If your inner dialogue is filled with harsh criticism or doubt, ask yourself, whose voice is this? It might be a parent, a partner, a teacher, or even society at large. Recognizing where these messages come from is the first step to separating yourself from them. The next step is challenging those old stories. Let's say you've been telling yourself, I'm unworthy of love because I was rejected. Pause and ask, is that true? Rejection is not a measure of your worth. It's a reflection of someone else's capacity to connect, not your value as a person. By questioning these beliefs, you start to see them for what they are: opinions, not facts. Then comes the most powerful step: replacing those old narratives with ones rooted in self-compassion and truth. Instead of I'm not enough, try I am worthy, just as I am. Instead of no one loves me, say I am capable of giving and receiving love. This is not about ignoring your pain. It's about choosing a perspective that empowers you rather than limits you. Reclaiming your narrative also means taking ownership of your story moving forward. You are not just the protagonist of your life, you are the author. Every choice you make is an opportunity to align with the truth of who you are. Surround yourself with people who remind you of your worth. Seek out environments that nurture your growth, and give yourself permission to heal at your own pace. Finally, remember that this process is not linear. Some days the old stories will creep back in, and that's okay. Rewriting your narrative is a practice, not a one-time event. Each time you choose self-compassion over self-criticism, each time you set a boundary or speak your truth, you are reclaiming your power. You are more than the labels others have placed on you. You are more than the mistakes you've made or the rejections you've endured. Your story is still unfolding, and you have the pen. Write a story that reflects your resilience, your courage, and your boundless capacity to love and be loved. Because the truth is, no one else gets to decide your worth. That's your story to write. The lie of perfectionism. Perfectionism is often disguised as a pursuit of excellence, but in reality, it's a destructive lie that keeps us trapped in the endless cycle of trying to prove our worth. For many women who feel unloved, perfectionism becomes a coping mechanism, a way to shield themselves from rejection, judgment, or failure. But instead of bringing the love and acceptance they long for, it often leads to exhaustion, anxiety, and deeper feelings of inadequacy. At its core, perfectionism is not about striving to be your best. It's about fearing you're not enough. It whispers, if I could just be flawless, then I'd be loved. If I never make mistakes, I'll never be rejected. If I can keep everything under control, no one will see my vulnerabilities. But here's the painful truth: perfection is unattainable. It's a mirage that keeps you running toward a destination you'll never reach. The lie of perfectionism starts early. Maybe you were praised only when you excelled in school, sports, or work, and you learned that love and approval were conditional. Or perhaps you were criticized harshly for your flaws, making you believe that being imperfect meant being unworthy. Over time, these experiences can create a belief system where your value feels tied to your achievements or appearance, not to your inherent humanity. But perfectionism doesn't protect us from pain, it magnifies it. When you set impossibly high standards for yourself, you live in constant fear of falling short. Every mistake feels like a failure. Every setback feels like proof that you're not good enough. And even when you succeed, the satisfaction is fleeting because the bar always moves higher. Perfectionism also isolates us. It creates a facade, a polished exterior that hides our struggles and insecurities. But love and connection, true, meaningful connection, can only happen when we allow ourselves to be seen as we are, imperfections and all. When we cling to perfectionism, we rob ourselves of the very relationships we're striving to protect. So how do we break free from this lie? The first step is recognizing it for what it is: a defense mechanism, not a path to happiness. Understand that perfectionism is rooted in fear of rejection, fear of failure, fear of not being enough. When you acknowledge that fear, you can start to challenge it. Next, practice self-compassion. When you make a mistake, instead of beating yourself up, try speaking to yourself as you would a close friend. Say, it's okay. Everyone makes mistakes. This doesn't define me. Self-compassion isn't just kindness, it's a powerful antidote to the shame that perfectionism feeds on. Another important step is redefining success. Instead of striving for flawlessness, aim for authenticity and growth. Celebrate progress, not perfection. Embrace the idea that mistakes are opportunities to learn, not proof of inadequacy. Lastly, surround yourself with people who value you for who you are, not for what you achieve. Healthy relationships are built on mutual respect and acceptance, not on performance. The more you allow yourself to be imperfect in these spaces, the more you'll realize that your worth has nothing to do with meeting impossible standards. Breaking free from perfectionism is not about lowering your expectations or giving up on goals. It's about realizing that you are already vulnerability as strength. Vulnerability is one of the most misunderstood aspects of the human experience. Many of us are taught to see vulnerability as a weakness, a crack in the armor that exposes us to judgment, rejection, or even failure. But in reality, vulnerability is the birthplace of courage, connection, and authentic living. For women who feel unloved, embracing vulnerability can be a powerful act of self-liberation and strength. At its core, vulnerability is the willingness to show up as you are without guarantees. It's the courage to share your true self, your fears, your flaws, your dreams, knowing there's a risk of being judged or misunderstood. It's saying, this is me, and I'm worthy, even if I'm not perfect. But here's the challenge: vulnerability can feel terrifying. For women who've been hurt or rejected, the instinct is often to armor up, to hide their emotions, and to pretend they're fine when they're not. The logic seems sound: if I don't let anyone in, they can't hurt me. Yet in closing ourselves off, we also block out the possibility of love, connection, and healing. True strength isn't about putting on a brave face or pretending you don't feel pain. It's about facing that pain and still choosing to engage with the world. Vulnerability requires more bravery than putting up walls. It's about standing in your truth, and allowing yourself to be seen, even when you're scared of what others might think. Consider this: every meaningful relationship you've ever had, whether with a partner, friend, or family member, was built on a foundation of vulnerability. Connection doesn't happen in perfection. It happens when we share our struggles, admit our fears, and let others see the parts of us we often try to hide. Vulnerability is the bridge between isolation and intimacy. It's also the foundation of personal growth. To learn, create, and thrive, we must be willing to risk failure. Vulnerability is the key to stepping out of our comfort zones and into the unknown, where the magic of growth happens. Think about the moments when you've been truly proud of yourself. Chances are they involved risk, uncertainty, or putting yourself out there. That's vulnerability in action. For women who feel unloved, embracing vulnerability might start with small, brave steps. It could be as simple as admitting, "I'm struggling," or asking for help when you need it. It could mean having an honest conversation with someone you trust, or allowing yourself to cry instead of pushing your emotions down. These moments may feel uncomfortable at first, but they are acts of strength and self-care. Vulnerability also requires boundaries. Being vulnerable doesn't mean sharing everything with everyone. It means choosing to open up in safe and supportive spaces. Not everyone deserves access to your heart, and that's okay. Strength lies in discerning who you can trust with your vulnerability and protecting yourself from those who cannot. One of the greatest gifts of vulnerability is self-acceptance. When you stop hiding your flaws, you stop judging yourself for having them. You start to see that imperfection is part of being human, not a reason to feel unworthy. And as you accept yourself, you teach others to do the same. It's important to remember that vulnerability is a practice, not a one-time event. You don't have to share your deepest feelings all at once or take huge risks immediately. Start where you are. Each time you allow yourself to be vulnerable, you build resilience and courage. You prove to yourself that you can survive discomfort and come out stronger on the other side. Vulnerability is not a weakness to overcome. It's a strength to embrace. It's the gateway to authentic relationships, personal growth, and a deeper sense of self-worth. When you dare to be vulnerable, you're not just showing courage, you're claiming your power, your truth, and your humanity. Because at the end of the day, the greatest strength we have is the ability to be real, even when it feels risky. To say, "This is me and I am enough." That is vulnerability. That is strength. Boundaries, the language of self-love. Boundaries are one of the most profound acts of self-love. They are the invisible lines we draw to protect our emotional well-being, our time, and our energy. They define what is acceptable in our relationships and what isn't. Yet, for many women, especially those who feel unloved, setting boundaries can feel uncomfortable, maybe even selfish or unkind. But the truth is, boundaries are not barriers. They are bridges to healthier relationships and a more fulfilled life. At their heart, boundaries are about respect for yourself and for others. When you set a boundary, you are saying, "I value myself enough to protect my peace, my time, and my emotional health." It's not about shutting people out. It's about creating a space where love, trust, and mutual respect can thrive. For women who feel unloved, the struggle with boundaries often begins with people pleasing. There's a deep-rooted fear that saying no or standing up for yourself will drive people away. So you say yes to things you don't want to do, tolerate disrespect, or prioritize everyone else's needs over your own. But here's the reality: every time you abandon your boundaries, you teach others that your needs don't matter. And over time, that erodes your sense of self-worth. Let's be clear, boundaries are not about controlling others. They're about defining what you will and won't accept in your life, for example. If someone consistently speaks to you disrespectfully, a boundary might be saying, I won't continue this conversation if you raise your voice at me. If you're overwhelmed by work or family demands, a boundary might look like carving out time for yourself and saying, I'm unavailable during this hour, I need time to recharge. Setting boundaries is an act of love, not just for yourself, but for others too. When you set clear boundaries, you create clarity in your relationships. People no longer have to guess what you're okay with or where the line is. This fosters healthier, more respectful interactions. But here's the truth: setting boundaries isn't always easy. It requires courage, especially if you've spent years suppressing your needs or prioritizing others. At first, you might feel guilty. You might worry that people will be upset with you or that you'll be seen as difficult. And sometimes they will be. But their reaction is not your responsibility. Healthy relationships will respect your boundaries, and those that don't may not be worth holding on to. One of the keys to setting effective boundaries is learning to communicate them clearly and calmly. Avoid over-explaining or apologizing for your needs or boundaries are valid simply because they matter to you. You use I statements to express your feelings and expectations, for example. Instead of saying, you're always interrupting me, try, I need you to let me finish speaking before responding. Instead of, why can't you ever respect my time? Try, I need you to arrive on time because my schedule is important to me. Boundaries also require consistency. If you set a boundary but don't enforce it, it loses its power. For instance, if you've told someone you won't tolerate disrespect but continue to engage when they are rude, you're sending mixed signals. Standing by your boundaries, even when it's hard, reinforces their importance and teaches others how to treat you. Another critical aspect of boundaries is understanding that they are not about rejection, they are about protection. By setting boundaries, you're not pushing people away, you're creating a healthier foundation for connection. Without boundaries, resentment often builds because we give more than we're comfortable with. Boundaries allow love to flow freely because they ensure your needs are met too. For women who feel unloved, boundaries are a way to reclaim your power. They remind you that you are worthy of respect and that your time, energy, and emotions matter. They are an act of self-love because they show that you are willing to advocate for yourself, even if it feels uncomfortable. Finally, remember that setting boundaries is a practice, not a one-time event. You'll make mistakes, and that's okay. Sometimes you'll let a boundary slide or overcompensate in an effort to keep the peace. The important thing is to keep coming back to yourself and asking, what do I need? And then honoring that answer. Boundaries are not walls, they are gates. They don't shut people out, they create pathways for healthier, more authentic relationships. They are a way of saying, I love myself enough to protect my peace, and I love you enough to show you how to love me in return. Because the truth is, when you honor your boundaries, you honor your worth, and there's nothing selfish or unkind about that. In fact, it's the greatest act of love you can give to yourself and to the people who matter most. Self-compassion as a daily practice. Self-compassion is one of the most transformative practices we can embrace, yet it's often the hardest to cultivate. Many of us are taught to extend kindness to others, but rarely to ourselves. For women who feel unloved, self-compassion can feel almost foreign, as though it's a luxury reserved for someone else. But here's the truth: self-compassion is not just an act of kindness, it's a necessity for healing, resilience, and reclaiming your worth. At its core, self-compassion means treating yourself with the same understanding and care that you would offer to a dear friend. When you stumble, it means saying, it's okay, you're human. When you face challenges, it's reminding yourself you're doing the best you can. And when you're overwhelmed, it's allowing yourself to rest instead of pushing through exhaustion. Many women struggle with self-compassion because they confuse it with self-indulgence or weakness. But self-compassion is not about letting yourself off the hook or avoiding responsibility. It's about recognizing that you don't have to be perfect to be worthy of love and respect, including love and respect from yourself. So how do we cultivate self-compassion? Let's break it down into a daily practice. 1. Recognize your inner critic. The first step to self-compassion is awareness. Pay attention to the way you talk to yourself, especially when you make a mistake or face a setback. Is your inner dialogue harsh or unforgiving? Many of us are our own worst critics, saying things to ourselves that we would never dream of saying to someone else. Begin to challenge that inner critic. When you catch yourself thinking, I'm so stupid for doing that, pause and reframe it. I made a mistake, but that doesn't define me. Recognize that your inner critic is not the voice of truth. It's often a reflection of past wounds or unrealistic expectations. 2, embrace your humanity. A big part of self-compassion is accepting that being human means being imperfect. Everyone makes mistakes, faces struggles, and has moments of doubt. It's what connects us all. When you feel overwhelmed by shame or self-doubt, remind yourself, I'm not alone in this. Others have felt this way too. This simple shift helps you move away from isolation and toward a sense of shared humanity. 3, practice kind self-talk. Replace self-criticism with kindness. When you're having a hard day, imagine how you would comfort a friend in your situation. What would you say to them? Now say it to yourself. For example, instead of saying, I'll never get this right, try this is hard, but I'm learning and growing. Instead of, I'm such a failure, say, this didn't work out, but it doesn't define my worth. Or allow yourself to feel. Self-compassion also means giving yourself permission to feel your emotions without judgment. If you're sad, let yourself cry. If you're angry, acknowledge it without guilt. Suppressing your emotions doesn't make them go away, it only deepens the pain. Remind yourself that all emotions are valid. They are signals, not flaws. By allowing yourself to feel, you give yourself the space to heal. 5, set boundaries to protect your energy. Self-compassion includes recognizing when you need to step back from situations or relationships that drain you. It's saying, I deserve to protect my peace, and acting on it. Setting boundaries isn't selfish, it's an act of self-respect. It shows that you value your well-being and won't compromise it for the sake of pleasing others. 6, celebrate your wins, no matter how small. A key part of self-compassion is recognizing and celebrating your efforts, even if they don't lead to immediate success. Did you try something new? Speak up in a meeting? Take a break when you needed it? Celebrate that. Every small step forward is worth acknowledging. Self-compassion grows when you focus on progress, not perfection. 7, create rituals of care. Make self-compassion a daily practice by building small rituals of care into your routine. This could be journaling for 5 minutes in the morning, taking a walk in nature, or ending the day with a few deep breaths and kind words to yourself. These rituals don't have to be elaborate. The goal is to consistently remind yourself that your well-being matters. 8, forgive yourself. One of the most profound acts of self-compassion is self-forgiveness. Holding on to guilt or shame from past mistakes only keeps you stuck. Acknowledge what happened, take responsibility if needed, and then let it go. Forgiving yourself doesn't erase the past, but it frees you to move forward. 9, seek support when needed. Self-compassion also means knowing when to ask for help. Whether it's a trusted friend, family member, or therapist, reaching out is not a sign of weakness, it's a sign of strength. No one has to navigate life's challenges alone. Allowing others to support you is a way of showing yourself that you're worthy of care. 10, be patient with yourself. Cultivating self-compassion is a journey, not a destination. Some days will be easier than others, and that's okay. Be patient with yourself as you unlearn years of self-criticism and replace it with kindness. Self-compassion is not something you earn, it's something you practice. It's a daily commitment to treating yourself with the care, understanding, and love you deserve. And the more you practice it, the more it becomes a part of who you are. Because at the end of the day, self-compassion is not just about feeling good, It's about recognizing your inherent worth. It's about saying, I am enough, just as I am. And when you truly believe that, everything changes. Ending of the speech. Let me leave you with this. Self-compassion is not a destination, it's a daily practice, a lifelong journey of choosing to honor yourself in moments both big and small. It's the quiet reassurance that your worth is not tied to your achievements, your past, or anyone else's opinion of you. It's the act of embracing your imperfections as part of what makes you beautifully human. Every time you speak to yourself with kindness, every time you forgive yourself for a mistake, and every time you honor your own needs, you are reclaiming your power. You are rewriting the narrative that says you're not enough and replacing it with a truth that has always been yours. You are worthy, you are whole, and you are deeply deserving of love, especially from yourself. So as you leave here today, I challenge you to take one small step towards self-compassion. Maybe it's pausing to take a deep breath when things get overwhelming. Maybe it's letting go of one harsh word you've been holding against yourself. Or maybe it's simply looking in the mirror and saying, I see you and I'm proud of you. Because when you practice self-compassion, you're not just showing yourself love, you're creating a foundation for resilience, joy, and connection. And that is a gift the world desperately needs. Remember this, the way you treat yourself sets the tone for how others treat you. So treat yourself with the love and kindness you would want for someone you care about deeply, because you deserve nothing less. Thank you.